What's up, guys? Welcome to our first Western Round 2 uh, 2025 Stanley Cup matchup video between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. So, this is a rematch of 2023 where the Edmonton Oilers lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games. That year, the Vegas Golden Knights went to the Stanley Cup Finals and won their first Stanley Cup. It was also a second round matchup that year as well. So, like Connor McDavid said in his press conference after eliminating the LA Kings, he's like, we remember what Vegas did to us a couple years ago. He's like, now we can't let that repeat itself, and we're gonna have to win this series. So, two different teams compared to how they looked like back in 2023, especially Vegas having a reshaped offensive core, but their defense is pretty much the same, and their goaltending is also different. Where as Edmonton also went through a revamp in terms of their decor, their offense, and their goaltending as well. And looking at the Edmonton Oilers and how they were matched up versus LA before round one started, we seriously thought that this was the year that Edmonton was going to lose versus LA. It was their fourth time facing off against each other, and LA was up 2-0. And then everything broke loose. Edmonton won 4 straight games to eliminate the LA Kings. They had no answer for multiple players, and it wasn't just McDavid and Draisaitl causing them problems. You had Evander Kane who came back from a long-term injury, and he was getting points. Connor Brown has shown that he's a playoff performer, especially last year in their playoff run to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2024. He woke up offensively too. Trent Frederick scored his first goal as an Oiler, and he came back from injury. You had Matthias Janmark again, just like Connor Brown. He's a playoff performer for the Edmonton Oilers. He did that last year too. They got their offense rolling finally because during the season there was a big question mark on the Edmonton Oilers offensively, seeing that they were heavily relying on Draisaitl and McDavid, and Zach Hyman did not have the same year that he did last year, but he started waking up in the later half of the season. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, same thing. And when it mattered most, all these guys stepped up and took out LA, making them win 4 straight round one series matchups versus the LA Kings. The LA Kings really don't have an answer to the Edmonton Oilers at this point. And despite Darcy Kemper being their MVP, really keeping them every single game, making so many saves, their defense and their offense just couldn't keep up with Edmonton. And also for the Edmonton Oilers, the biggest changing point that potentially saved their season was getting rid of Stuart Skinner as their starting goaltender and bringing in Calvin Pickard as their starter. Who would have thought that Pickard would have been the answer, or at least a temporary answer, to Edmonton's problems and helping them reach the second round?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a big decision, and I think, look, like everyone saw Stuart Skinner last year in the playoffs and how well, right? Well, he had his ups and downs, and there was a lot of concern about how Edmonton needed to bolster their goaltending, and they didn't do that during the regular season again. And then they come into the playoffs, and the first 2 games, Stuart Skinner basically is unplayable, flat out just horrible. And they come in and Pickard came in and won them games. And I think at the end of the day, like I think that's a bigger. I think if you're Stuart Skinner, it's a bigger concern for you in the future. For Calvin Pickard, I mean, listen, it's your net now, buddy, and you got to ride with it and give him credit where credit's due. His numbers aren't elite there, but I mean they got the job done. So at the end of the day, I think for Edmonton, they're going to take that and kind of move forward. But I want to talk a little bit about the Edmonton Oilers. Then we're going to jump to Vegas because I don't think Vegas was particularly great in their series either. But we'll talk about the Oilers, and obviously McDavid and Draisaitl. We're doing what McDavid and Draisaitl always do. So nothing too surprising there from both those guys. Evan Bouchard had a really interesting series. He was very good for the Oilers offensively, probably a big liability for Edmonton defensively. And I think that played a big role in this series as well because, Evan Bouchard is the type of defenseman that can get you, be a point-a-game defenseman, score some points, really be a difference maker in the offensive zone for the Oilers. But in the defensive zone, he could be a liability. And I think he showed in this series, right, a tale of two a tale of two players. A player that, like I said, can be a really big difference maker for the Oilers offensively, but defensively, just it wasn't it. And then, give credit to their depth, right? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 5 points in 6 games. Connor Brown, 5 points in 6 games. Zach Hyman, Vasily Podkolzin had 4 assists in 6 games. Evander Kane came back, which was a huge boost for them. Right, Corey Perry, Matthias Janmark, all guys that were on the team last year. So, they've gotten production from a lot of guys, and Jake Wallman was a big part of their decor as well, +8 for him in 6 games. Really good acquisition for the Oilers this season. But I was very impressed with their bounce back. I thought the Oilers, handled the situation really well. It looked like after the first 2 games of that series between LA and Edmonton, it felt like LA was going to run away with it. And Edmonton seems to have LA's number. They beat them 4 straight times in a row now, and it's a good matchup for Edmonton. But this is something that I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Oilers, is they were able to find a way to get rid of the 2-0 series lead for the LA Kings, really go back to the game and play their game the way they're supposed to, get the offensive production. I think going into this series against Vegas, it's going to be a little bit tougher for them because they're playing a team that's a little bit more offensively gifted in the Vegas Golden Knights. And the other thing too is, right, they're gonna need Calvin Pickard to be better, and they're also gonna need Pickard to be, at his best. And Pickard wasn't at his best against LA, and they still ended up winning. And I still think, look, his number, like I said, his numbers aren't great, but he won. I think for this series, it's really going to come down to goaltending. And the reason I say that is if you go to the Vegas series and you look at the Vegas series, Aiden Hill's numbers aren't great either, right? He finished with an 880 save percentage, really didn't play that great. I thought there were games as well, not just from a goaltending perspective, but even Vegas as a whole. I thought Minnesota outplayed them at times. It Vegas really didn't come into this series looking that great. I don't think they really showed their true potential. And so I think there's a lot of potential to be unlocked in this series, and it could be a really exciting series because you look at the numbers that Vegas put up. Thomas Hertl had 5 points in 6 games. Jack Eichel had 5 points in 6 games. Mark Stone 4. Shea Theodore 4. Right, Brett Howden three goals in 6 games, and then it kind of just falls off. And it's like Vegas didn't really have anyone to grab it by the horns and really be able to lead them to this series. It was a team collective effort, which I think is important. But I think for Vegas, we really didn't see their true colors in the series against Minnesota. And I think for them, they got a little bit lucky in the sense where I think Minnesota kind of beat themselves at times, and Vegas won games in overtime, and I think they were bailed out in that regard. But I wasn't overly impressed with the Vegas Golden Knights either, and so I think that's why it makes this series really tough to call in the sense where we know that both these teams are better. We've seen them play better. I mean, Edmonton made the Cup final last year, right? So we know that there's another gear that they can take it to, and I think for both for both Edmonton and Vegas, there was a little bit of luck in this series in the sense where LA kind of choked and Minnesota choked because I think Minnesota beat themselves in a lot of games and really put themselves in vulnerable positions, and Vegas took advantage. And at the end of the day, the numbers and the roster is a better roster than Minnesota, so obviously Vegas won that.
Yeah.
But look, like it's tough to call. I think for me, I'm gonna go with Edmonton, and I think the reason I'm gonna go with Edmonton is McDavid and Draisaitl are McDavid and Draisaitl, and they're on a mission. I think they have expectations to obviously go back to the Cup final this year and win. I think that if you're Edmonton as well, right, you got to look at the LA series and it give you some confidence that, like, look, if you can play like that offensively and you can put it together like you did against LA, that it'll come together against Vegas. The problem is like I said, they're gonna need their goaltending to be at 100%. They're gonna need their goaltending to be a lot better than what it was against the LA Kings. And the same thing goes for the Vegas Golden Knights. Aiden Hill is not playing like a goaltender that was called up for Team Canada. Although he didn't play for Team Canada, he was part of the Four Nations team, right? He's not looking like the goaltender that won the Cup for Vegas a couple of years ago. So he needs to be better too. And so I think that's why this series is going to come down to that. But I think I look, I'm not going to bet. I bet against McDavid last series, and I was wrong because I thought LA was going to do it. I'm not going to bet against McDavid this time. I'm going to say Edmonton in 6. I think the Oilers are going to beat the Vegas Golden Knights and go to the conference final for a second year running.
So, just taking a overview look at this series matchup, just looking at the Vegas Golden Knights, because I know I really dove deep into Edmonton before, but the Vegas Golden Knights are missing a lot of star players that had a lot of playoff experience, such as Jonathan Marchessault. He was very clutch for the Vegas Golden Knights in many playoff runs for the Vegas Golden Knights. Um, Also, I mean, let's give him his flowers because Thomas Hurdle has been a monster this year and he's been fantastic. So that's great to have him on your back end. But, I'm not too crazy about Victor Olofsson. I think he's very inconsistent. Tanner Pearson, you know, nothing special either. Really impressed with Brett Howden. I don't know what it is, but he's exactly like Matthias Janmark and Connor Brown. Like he's not as dominant in the season, but when it comes to playoffs, holy crap.
I
This
mean, he
guy
scored
was
20 goals.
yeah, this he had a very good year this year, but
Or 30 goals.
I'm saying
Yeah.
overall in his career, like he's a guy that goes under the radar, right? And then when it comes to playoff time, he's so consistent. Like Ivan Barbashev, he was playing in the top six at one point. Now he finds himself in the third line. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues, and he's going to be able to play up and down in the lineup for Vegas.
Right.
So that's good. You have Brandon Saad who has experience too. Um, but the biggest question mark here is Dorofeyev, his health status. He's day to day, but he's not practicing, and he's one of their top goal scorers.
Right.
And you need that on your team. If you're gonna play versus a high scoring team and Edmonton that just got Evander Kane back, like as of right now, Vegas's top six is very weak
Right.
compared to Edmonton's. Like, no disrespect to William Karlsson, but playing on that top line, like this is not the William Karlsson that broke out his first year at Vegas. He should be playing on the third line, right? Keegan Colasar, he's not a second line player. Brandon Saad is no longer a top six forward anymore in the NHL. He's
Right.
a third liner at most, right? So,
Right.
I'm just looking at this and it's like, and even Jack Eichel, like he only woke up at the later half of the first round series versus Minnesota, but at the beginning he was fairly quiet. So
Right.
like they're gonna need contribution from everybody. This is gonna have to be a team effort. And I'm not saying that Vegas got lucky, but when Gus Vidson gets pulled out in Game 6 in the third period because he's not feeling well, he's sick, and Fleury comes in. Let's be honest here. I don't want to be mean towards Fleury, but like your chances have just increased if Fleury's in nets. He's no longer the same goaltender he was when he won Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? And even with his time with Vegas. So when they score in overtime versus Fleury, like you're not really scoring the winning goal versus their starting goaltender. You're scoring versus their weaker goalie in Fleury, right? And then game 7, yeah, they took the bull by the horns and they did what they had to do and they finished the job. Sorry, in game 6, my bad. And then the overtime game was game 5. So,
Right.
Minnesota really gave them a run for their money at the beginning of the series, but I felt that goalie change in game 5 was the turning point. That's what cost them the series.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if you win that game for Mini, you're going. This series probably goes to 7 games. It, I, it's hard, man. Overtime is overtime, right? It's really tough to say. And obviously, I think them losing Gustafson, uh, through because of illness and whatever in that overtime obviously plays a role. But I think that's why I'm saying that there was a little bit of luck for Vegas. They did enough to win, but like it's kind of like Washington and Montreal, like the way we talked about it last time, right? It's like the Caps weren't at their best and they still got it done. The difference is that I actually genuinely believe that Vegas didn't play that well. Like I watched some of the games and I'm like, Vegas just doesn't look like themselves.
Yeah.
They look like a shell of themselves. They look like there's something bothering them or there's something that's just not going right for them. And even in the games that they won, right? Like they were close games and credit to Minnesota. Like I said, and like you said, right, they gave them a good run for their money, and they did. But Minnesota was at their best, whereas Vegas wasn't. And so I think that there's a little bit of like, I think we expected a lot of an easier series, and that's not a disrespect to Minnesota. I think we expected Vegas to have an easier series than they did, and I just don't think they did that. And at the same time, like I watch, I look at Vegas from a whole, and I'm like, there needs to be a little bit better, right? Like Eichel. Eichel, like you said, only stepped it up the last couple of games in the series. Before that, he was kind
His
of
goal
quiet.
differential was horrible too. Like he just didn't look like the Jack Eichel that we saw in the season. Their
Right.
best player was you
Probably
know
Brett
it's
Howden.
yeah. But I was gonna say I wanted to say that, but I was like, if I say that, are they gonna hate on me? Are they gonna be like, yo, you're really choosing a fourth liner over like
Oh
their guys in their top six?
I think what beat yeah, but I think what Vegas I think what beat Minnesota was Vegas's depth, right? The fact that they were able to rely on their
Hey,
bottom.
you can't disrespect Ryan Hartman like that. Ryan Hartman was Minnesota's best player,
I'm saying yeah,
apart
but I'm
from
saying
Kaprizov and Boldy.
like yeah, but it was a lot more of just Kaprizov and Boldy. Like Kaprizov and Boldy had 5 goals each, right? I'm saying like they were the ones that pretty much scored most of the goals for
Yeah,
Minnesota. And then there was obviously like a couple of goals here and there from those guys, and Hartman played a big role. But I'm saying Vegas had a lot more depth scoring from guys on their team. Like if you look at the stats, right? Like Shea Theodore had 2 goals, Petrangelo had one, Hannafin had one, Nicholas Waugh had one, Nicolau Waugh had one. Obviously Howden had 3. But then even guys like Dorofeyev, Riley Smith, William Karlsson, Ivan Barbashev, they all had a goal. So I'm saying like they got scoring from everybody. And I think that's a big thing. Even if they didn't produce at a point per game level, like
yeah.
some guys should have, they got goals when they needed to get
It
goals.
was spread out
Right.
sporadically. Yeah,
So I think for Vegas, like, look, this series is going to come down to um, special teams. I think it's also going to come down to defense, and I think it's going to come down to goaltending. And the reason I say that is Vegas's defense is a lot better than Edmonton's. I think if you look at Vegas's decor and you look at Edmonton's decor, I think Vegas has a better decor. Hannafin's a very good player, right?
yeah,
Petrangelo and Shea Theodore are fantastic players. You know, Braden McNabb's really been a big difference maker for Vegas on the back end. They have Zach Whitecloud, that's a decent defenseman, Nick Hague as well. So they really have a good top six, and I like their top six a lot. And you look at Edmonton, and there's obviously concerns there, right? Darnell Nurse, not a great defenseman defensively. Evan Bouchard, as much as he's great offensively, can be a liability on the back end. They added Jake Wallman, who I think was a big help for them, right? They added Brett Kulak, but the big difference for Edmonton, and it showed in the LA series, is the fact that they didn't have Ekholm.
yeah,
And I don't know. There's been rumors that he might come back in these playoffs. There's rumors that he might not. He might miss the whole second round. That's a big loss for the Oilers, and I think
yeah.
that shows exactly just how important Matthias Ekholm was to their decor, because it showed it affected the way they played. And I know that yes, their goaltending wasn't great. Like Stuart Skinner was awful, right? And like that's regardless of who you add to the back end, Stuart Skinner needs to be better. But
Literally the
either
worst
way,
goalie
either
in
way,
the
like
playoffs.
that's a big loss. And for me, I think although I say that, I think there's just a mission that it seems like Edmonton is on, right?
Yeah.
With Draisaitl and McDavid, and I can't bet against Draisaitl and McDavid a second time. I did that in round one, and it bit me in the ass, and fair enough.
We all
But
did. I think many of
yeah,
us said this is the year that LA wins it, and we
and
were all wrong.
we
A
were
lot of
all wrong.
brackets have been destroyed, especially after
Dude,
the result of Dallas and Colorado last night.
I had Tampa and Colorado in the Cup final, and I was completely off. So,
Yeah,
you know, it is what it is. But I'm saying, like in general, you look at Vegas's team and you look at Edmonton's team, and I think for them, it's gonna be interesting to see who's gonna step up. I think if Edmonton's big guys continue to step up and they get the depth scoring from the guys that they've gotten depth scoring on from Connor Brown, Zach Hyman, Evander Kane, Corey Perry, I think Edmonton's gonna win this series. The only, let's say, question mark is how good is Pickard going to be, right? Pickard's never really been in this position before, right? Stuart Skinner did, and he was. And, you know, even though he wasn't great last year, he ended up making the Cup final. But he's been horrible this year, and you have to ride with Pickard. But I'm saying, how much of a leash does Pickard have? Does he like play the first 2 games of the series like Stuart Skinner? And if he shits the bed, you go back to Stuart Skinner. What's the rule for Edmonton going into this series?
well,
And how good is Pickard going to be?
all I'm
Because
gonna say is
that
that
could change the series.
they're very lucky that they found a way to come back and that they
Right.
have fantastic players on the roster that balances out their horrible goaltending. But like this needs to be addressed. It's
Yeah.
many years now. I mean, no disrespect towards like guys like Mike Smith and all the other guys they've had, but it's been like 15 years. These guys like Cam Talbot, like that they've had very inconsistent goaltending. They never had a true starting goaltender, and
Right.
they're gonna have to go and do that. Whether if they win the Stanley Cup or if they don't, that's their main priority. And the fact they didn't do that at the deadline, and they got Jake Wallman, which they got him, not even giving up that much, in my opinion, for the quality of player that he is. And I thought he would have really fit with San Jose long term, the quarterback, their power play. But and even he's even very good defensively. He blocks a lot of shots. And Yzerman's an idiot for for literally giving him up for nothing. But whatever, that's a different story. The Yzer plan, what a bust that's been. But anyways, they're but the thing is that the Jake Wallman trade, even though it seemed unnecessary at that point, he was very good when he joined Edmonton, and the fact that Ekholm got injured, they're lucky they have Wallman there.
Yeah, Wallman's been such a good ad for the Oilers. Like he's played
Yeah,
really, really well.
they're
And
lucky they added him
and
because
I'm
man, they
not
would have
I'm
been
not
screwed
surprised.
right now.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I mean, he was really good in San Jose too, and he was on a bad Sharks team, and he still played well. And then
Yeah,
he goes to Edmonton, and he obviously plays a lot better. Like Wallman's been Wallman's been such a good story for Edmonton this year, and like you said, thank God he's playing and Ekholm. Like it's deviating a little bit from the fact that Ekholm's been out, but I mean, yeah, we'll see. It's hard. This is a hard series to call. I think this is probably one of the hardest ones to call because both teams were not great in their first round series.
yeah.
And so
It's
I
like
think,
who's going to be the less shittier team, or who's going to be the one to wake up and
yeah.
take the bull by the
So
horns? You know?
but I think if you look at the series, right, and we're still awaiting the result for Winnipeg and St. Louis to figure out who's going to play Dallas in the next round. But if you look at the three series that have been announced so far, right, I think we had this conversation. It's probably after Washington Carolina, it's the second boring series. I think even regardless of who wins between Winnipeg and St. Louis, I still think that's going to be a more entertaining series than Vegas and Edmonton and Washington and Carolina. And the reason I say that is I just like I like goals in the series, but I like to watch good hockey, like good
Yeah,
teams go at it against each other. And I mean, I hope Edmonton and Vegas bring that. The only thing is they they both weren't at their best, and I'm hoping in the second round we get to see more. I want to see Jack Eichel versus Connor McDavid at their best. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Jack Eichel being at his best, Connor McDavid being at his best, right?
exactly.
I want to see a goaltending battle. I want to see going
Yeah,
back on one end of the ice. Pickard makes a nice save, and then you go to the other end, and Hill makes a nice save. It's that's the type of hockey that I want to watch. And unfortunately, I just feel like it's going to be another series like the LA series where games are going to end 6-4, 6-5 in overtime. Both goalies are going to face 30 shots, let in 5 goals each, and it's going to be that type of series, which is fun. But it's also, if you're a fan of those teams or if you're a neutral, you're like, hey, but dude, stop the puck at some point. You know what I mean?
yeah. So let's just take a look at advanced analytics right now, and just
Yeah.
to take a look at some team stats. So in terms of goals for, obviously, the Edmonton versus LA series was high scoring. And I know I said Kemper is the MVP. He was, because look at the amount of shots he was facing every single game. His defense did not give him any help. I'm sorry. In the second half, in the later half of the series, he was left out for dry. And I know people are gonna be like, yeah, but he lost. He was letting in 4 or 5 goals. Yeah, but look what he was facing. Look what he was doing by himself. So even his save percentage does not dictate how well he played, in my opinion. Kemper was the best goalie they've had at the 4 times that they faced the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
He was better than Corpusalo, right? So, anyways, and he was better than Cam Talbot too. So, anyways,
I
let's
LA
yeah,
is a whole different story because I think LA lost the series because the coach just made boneheaded decisions. But anyways, that's a story for another day. But the point is that there was a little bit of luck with Edmonton too. Not in the sense where I think Edmonton outplayed them after game 2, but I'm saying like there was a lot of decisions that LA made that were big brain. When you try to big brain something and it doesn't work. That's
yeah,
what LA tried to do. It's they got too comfortable being up to nothing, and the coach went, "Okay, I guess I'm gonna play Edmonton 35 minutes a night." And it's well, why? I don't know if you saw the overtime game that they played. Um, there was one, I think there was a stat that LA showed where it was Edmondson, Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty, and Gavrikov had 35 minutes of ice time each. and then Brant Clark, Moverari, and Spence played less than like 15 minutes.
Well,
And I think Brant Clark played 13 out of those 15 minutes.
it was reported that after Edmonton won that overtime game, that the members in the organization were literally fighting with each other like verbally, and because they were so frustrated that they blew a 2-0 lead, and they didn't understand how they had control and pure dominance in the first two games, and how they completely just blew that
Well,
away.
it was one of the craziest things I've seen, because if you watch that third period of, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been game 3. Let me just double check that, because I don't want to get this wrong. I
You're,
remember watching this and I was like, what the hell's going on? Like,
Edmonton
why
had a
is
2-0 lead in game 3. LA
right?
comes back, they take the lead, and then they blew it.
No, it was
Like,
game 4. Game 4 was where I was like, this is like a big problem, because so LA's up 3-1 going into the third period. Okay, they're up 3-1 going into the third period. At this point, like, all you got to do is hold on, and you have a 3-1 series lead, and you're going back to LA with a chance to close it out, right? And what do? Well, Evan Bouchard goes to score, and then Evan Bouchard ties the game with, 30 seconds, 29 seconds left after LA misses a penalty shot. And then instead of trying to win the hockey game, LA does something that I just don't understand, like a coach doing, is they overplayed their top 4 units. And the reason I'm saying that is Moverari played 2 minutes and 26 seconds. Brad Clark played 11 and 58. And you could turn around and say, like, yeah, okay, you got to, dude, you lost this game because you overplayed your veteran players. And at the end of the day, you have 2 young guys who are top 6. You're basically playing Edmonton with 4 defensemen in going into overtime. Like, it doesn't make any
they
sense.
don't
And
trust Clark. Like, Clark did so
but that
well for them at the beginning of the season,
that's why they
and then
lost the series.
they started mistreating him. They
Yeah.
took him off the power play. There was rumors that he was going to get traded. Like this guy like literally carried Doughty's weight when he was gone, and that's like the respect he
But
gets. Like,
that's
whatever.
where LA lost the series, because Edmonton at that point, once they win that series, right? Once they win that game, they tie the series 2-2. They go back to LA with a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum, and you could tell after game 4, LA lost a lot of confidence, because that game really changed the complexity of the series. And I genuinely think that they lost the series because of coaching. And I know people are gonna say, oh, it's small moments in a series, and it happens, and coaches make these decisions. But dude, you you know when you're up 3-1 in a game in which you got to close out to basically take a 3-1 series lead in these playoffs, you got to take advantage of those moments. And if you're not able to adapt and not able to close that out, then you don't deserve to be there anyways. And Edmonton did a very good job of being able to come back, tie the game, and push the game to overtime and be able to win it. And I think that to me was an example of LA not being able, not necessarily experience. I think it was LA not being able to, handle the situation and the pressure of the moment. And at the same time, like I said, Edmonton's been in this position before. They went to the Cup final last year. They understand it. That's why I think Edmonton's on a high right now. They've won 4 straight. They're ready to go. I think they're going to give Vegas a hard-fought series. And I think for Edmonton, there's just a lot of motivation there. And
Yeah,
when you win a game like that,
winning for Ekholm is on their mind right now.
right?
Trying
And
to
I
get him
think
for round 3.
Right. And I think for Edmonton, it's about the motivation, the fact that, you were able to overcome that 2-goal deficit in the third period, and the fact that you were able to come back from 2-0 down in the series to win it. That's huge for a team, right?
Yeah,
That's really, really huge for a team. And I think for Edmonton, like, if they continue like that, I think the sky's the limit. I think they could go to the Cup final again, but obviously they're going to probably end up playing Dallas if they win, unless something crazy happens in round 2. But I'm saying
I have
for
yet to give my
Edmonton,
prediction, but I will after I do this stuff, and I think it's gonna be pretty clear who I choose, and yeah. So I mean, just taking a look here, like their power play compared to Vegas, especially considering the fact that Dorofeyev did not play the second half of the sorry, he missed the last game of the series between Minnesota and Vegas, and he's day to day and he's not practicing.
yeah,
That's a huge blow to not only their top 6 but their power play. This is a guy
yeah,
who scored 30 goals, And if you look at the numbers here, 38.5%
on the power play.
compared to 27.8, that's a jump of over 10%,
Yeah,
right?
but how many power play goals? Vegas had 5 power play goals, and Edmonton had 5 power play goals. So it's also dependent on the how many power play opportunities they got. But um, both teams have the same amount of power play goals. So there's that to take into consideration. Edmonton was more effective, but that's also probably because they had probably less power plays than Vegas
The
did.
penalty kill is better, Vegas, and obviously, there's no doubt about it when you have literally Hannafin, McNabb, Theodore, and Petrangelo as your top four. Like these guys are fantastic offensively and defensively, and um, all three guys had 3 to 4 points as defensemen. They were getting contribution from them offensively. That's great. So in
Yeah.
terms of the defensive department, their decor is better than Edmonton's, especially that Ekholm was not there. Um, no disrespect to Bouchard and Nurse. They're very inconsistent. Bouchard is just better offensively than he is defensively. So that puts a lot more pressure on guys like Wallman to play more defensive, where this is a guy that's really good as a two-way defenseman, and he's going to have to tone it down offensively to carry the load defensively because Ekholm is not there. So, that hurts them. There's a lot more pressure on their decor, but offensively, it goes to the Edmonton Oilers. Why? Because they have McDavid, they have Draisaitl, their top six with Evander Kane back, uh, Corey Perry being pivotal in their top six, especially being a great playoff performer like he's shown these last couple of years with Tampa, Montreal, Edmonton, and Dallas. That age is just a number. This guy is able to be a gamer when it counts. So offense goes to them, and goaltending. Um, if Picard continues to play like he has been, and Hill continues to play as he's been, I think it's pretty even because this is arguably the worst goalie matchup we're going to get in the second round. Hill versus Picard. And Hill wasn't that great in the season too. There was times where he looked awful and Samsonov came in and looked a little bit better than Hill. This is not the Hill that won the Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights 2 years. Like he's he's been very inconsistent at times,
Yeah.
and Picard not being the starter, obviously, the odds are against him as well. So maybe Hill gets a little bit of the edge because he won a Stanley Cup, because he's more of a clear cut starter than Picard. Picard's a backup goalie or a 1B. And, but they're going to be riding the hot wave. And, Picard is 4-0, right? So we can't discredit him there.
No, you
Just
can't.
want, so we'll see what happens in the second round in terms of the goaltending. Um, what else did I want to look at here? Um, yeah, and obviously having McDavid and Draisaitl in the top four for leading point getters in the postseason is fantastic. And well, now they're top three because McKinnon and Kempe are eliminated, right? So, yeah, this is going to be a series where I think Edmonton takes it in six. So it's going to be a
Yeah,
reverse.
that's what I think too.
It's going to be a reverse um, result of what we experienced 2 years ago, where Vegas won 4-2. It's going to be Edmonton winning 4-2.
Yeah.
Without Dorofeyev, Edmonton could take advantage of that. With Edmonton being healthier all around, just having no Ekholm works out in their favor. I think that it's great having a Vegas being spread out offensively, getting offense from their defense. But guys like Barbashev need to be better. He was
Yeah.
not great in the first round. Um, William Karlsson's going to have to step up. We'll see what he does in that top six role if Dorifev does not play this round. Victor Olofsson, really just known for his offensive game, and he's really just effective on the power play. Not that great in the top six or 5v5. Brett Howden, he's going to have to continue doing what he's doing and carry that weight offensively. Nicolas Roy has been good as well. Eichel's going to have to be better. Stone's gonna have to be better. Their top players are gonna have to elevate their game because as of right now, they're pretty much being saved by their defense.
Okay. Yeah. No,
So
I agree.
so yeah, I think Edmonton takes in six. I think they get Ekholm back in round three, and that could change everything. Will we see Stuart Skinner in this round? I don't really think so, unless really Vegas surprised the world and they're winning like 3-0 or something,
Like
which I don't think will be the case.
the only way we see Stuart Skinner as a series is if Calvin Pickard plays as bad as Stuart Skinner played in the first round.
Yeah,
Like I think I don't think Stuart Skinner sees the net, especially with how good Pickard's been, and I think that's a big conversation Edmonton might have to have in the offseason. But I the only way Stuart Skinner gets back in this net is if Pickard really shits the bed.
yeah, and also, like I said, and the stats have proven it as well. Jake Wallman has been the perfect replacement for Ekholm. Ekholm is
Yeah,
always known for being the defenseman with the best plus and minus. Guess who has the best plus minus for on their decor right now?
yeah,
In
it's
the second, Jake Wallman.
and Philip
So
Broberg.
yeah. So, oh yeah, Broberg, their ex defenseman. Anyways, if St. Louis makes the second round, and they beat Winnipeg, that's going to be a very interesting topic. It's going to be we have a lot to say about St. Louis and how they've constructed that team and getting Jim Montgomery as their head coach. And well, yeah, what a shift that's been for St. Louis.
Yeah,
So, not as crazy as the 2019 turnaround, but still very
it's
crazy.
up
Still,
there. It's up
yeah,
there.
it's up there. Yeah, it's really
If they
crazy.
win the cup again this year, it'll be pretty similar.
Yeah, especially what they were, how good they've been since the Four Nations and Robert Thomas being a point per game player. But like, yeah, anyways, that's another topic for another time. If we even get there, we'll see what
Right.
happens. But Mark Scheifele not playing Game 7 versus Winnipeg is gonna really kill them, and we'll see if Hellebuck is able to stand on his head and wake up when it matters most. Because so far, Binnington has Hellebuck's number. They beat them.
In the Four Nations and in the playoffs.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But guys, make sure to comment in the comment section below who wins this series. Is it the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights? Who will be the X factor? Who needs to step up on both ends of the ice? Um, Also, how many games will this series be? And also, if you don't agree with any of our takes or some of our takes, make sure to give your own opinions as well. And we love having conversations in the comment section. And also check out our other round two matchup videos. We'll see you in the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Until next time.
Peace.